Well, the people have spoken, and y'all may declare it's time to revisit our favorite dark superhero epic. With Season 4 of Invincible done for the year, the time has come to prepare for the non-stop complaints about the animation quality, pointless power scaling debates, and tech jacket slander posts after not living up to the fans' sky-high expectations. But beyond the fandom nonsense and Mark's continual ride on the Nihilism Express, this season was all about taking a look under the hood of Viltrum, its people, and the lack of a functioning culture beyond survival of the fittest bullshit. Ultimately showing that once you take away the hype and aura-forming silliness, and them all rocking the same flying brick build, they would have, and should have, crumbled faster than Mark after an average Tuesday. Hey team, Phantom Skull, the super security VTuber here, and today we're looking at the Viltrum Empire, its nonsensical self-destructive beliefs, and why they kinda suck when you peel back the power-scaly bullshit that has hyped them up for 4 seasons. So stand ready for their arrival as we talk about the rise and fall of these OP space fascists. Full spoilers ahead for all recent Invincible seasons. As always, no future comic spoilers here, since I'm not a dick like that. Viltrum's backstory is a pretty short, simple, but unfortunate one. A species of humanoids who all developed godlike powers that are unrivaled by most of the galaxy. Their culture was hijacked by a madman named Emperor Orgol. He taught a twisted might makes right expansionist mindset that spread like wildfire. After Thaddeus, aka the Betrayer, fled after killing Orgol, his top acolyte Thrag commanded a free-for-all battle to purge the weak, losing half of their species in a bloody, messy planetary brawl. After the dust had settled and the blood dried, the only surviving Viltrumites were all hardcore Orgolists, who turned his sociopathic conqueror ramblings into both their entire culture and their personalities. That day, all is ours became their terrifying philosophy. Spreading their divine right to conquest to the outer galaxy, they raised and enslaved countless planets as part of their empire uncontested, until Thaddeus chose a biological solution to the problem. The Scourge virus would prove effective, driving the cold-hearted species to near extinction. But even after getting dropped to 50 full-blooded Viltrumites, that only resolved their drive to dig themselves deeper into their beliefs. While keeping up appearances, they'd send one of their best to find a species compatible enough with them to repopulate with. This agent would hit the jackpot when finding Earth and siring the first successful half-Viltrumite, Mark aka Invincible. But after several bloody seasons of character development, Nolan has turned against the Empire, and now works with his sons and the coalition of planets to put an end to the Empire's century-long reign of terror once and for all. But even in their crippled state, how bloody will the Empire's twilight end up being for their many enemies? Unsurprisingly, with its most notable member being a Superman homage, the Viltrumites are a dark parody of Superman's lost people, the Kryptonians. Krypton being more blood and conquest focused isn't a new concept. Their counterparts in My Adventures with Superman leans heavily into them being a doomed and dead planet of aggressive colonizers. The Viltrumites are unique in how they're the purest example of self-destructive fascist ideology from the mustache down. And yeah, I'm sure some of you are all rolling your eyes at the F-word being used, but there's no tiptoeing around it. Every single drop of Viltrum's culture, if you can call it that, is steeped in the core tenets and mentalities you see with fascists. A violent might makes right mentality that rewards brutality, conquest, and death, while treating empathy, care, and intellectualism as weak. The aggressive expansionist colonizing and treating it as their divine right. The dehumanization of all others that aren't like them to better justify crushing everyone against them to dust. At first glance, they check all of the obvious boxes, but it goes far deeper than that. Season 4 gives us a good look at Viltrum at their peak before they got clapped by space COVID, and at a glance, you'd be confused at how clean and orderly, to an almost sterile degree, Viltrum is for a race of blood-hungry, battle-obsessed maniacs. That's a pretty frequent factor with fascist societies, and it's not the lowest common denominator thought that they're doing something right. It brings to mind the willfully stupid who posted memes about the peacemaker twist of Earth 2 being a Nazi society by going, "If it's so bad, why is the all-white society so clean and orderly, huh?" While ignoring the fact it was built off the suffering and death of non-whites in that dimension. Just because the streets are clean doesn't make the mountain of bodies they swept under it go away. The Viltrumites, much like Nazi Germany, were obsessed with optics. Their entire mythos was about how much better life was with the master race's boot against your neck. They care more about their image above anything else. The Nazis put a lot of effort into optics. The slick, Hugo Boss-designed uniforms, nationalizing the film industry to pump out non-stop propaganda, focusing their industry on flashy bombers and rockets over practical and proven weapons of war. All of it was to put on a show for how strong and advanced they supposedly were, and that they were allegedly unstoppable. The Viltrumites, while not that media savvy, were good at protecting their own optics. They hid how badly the Scourge virus decimated them so well that not even Thaddeus, the guy who made it, ever found out it even did anything to them until centuries later when Nolan defected to the Coalition. They spent centuries with just 50 of their kin and were very good at keeping up appearances, so well in fact that none of their slave armies or subjugated planets put 2 and 2 together. How did they do that? By implementing another checkbox on the F-word list, the projection of fear. Totalitarian regimes both in fiction and real life rarely function out of the perceived competence and skill they like to project. The Galactic Empire, Homelander's soup regime, all are shown to be wildly incompetent at ruling, but have scared their populaces so much that nobody but the bravest are willing to speak out. Another factor that helped them keep their vice grip on the galaxy was the personality type that they cultivated and ingrained into their society. Fascist-flavored ideologies attract a lot of types. You've got the supreme leaders at the top, schemers and opportunists who may not 100% drink the Kool-Aid, but support it for their own self-interests. And a lot of apathetic people who can see how fucked up it all is, or would rather go through the motions than risk themselves until the evil they live with is directly affecting them. Then you have the true believers. These are often mentally unstable individuals with a lot of self-confidence and other issues they bury by going all in on the rhetoric that makes them feel strong in air quotes. These types can rarely be changed or convinced, as they're often dedicated to their regime's insane tenets to a quasi-religious and often violently maniacal degree. What honestly makes the Viltrumites truly scary beyond their powers is the fact that they're an entire species of true believers. Everyone, even their Grand Regent, legitimately believes in Orgol's divine right to conquest bullshit. Thrag is literally huddling in the dark, quietly affirming his dedication to the cause, talking and bowing to 3/4 of Orgol's skull. Until Nolan and his sons, the only Viltrumites in history to turn against their beliefs was Thaddeus. And he defected hundreds of years ago. Centuries of culling anyone that might even slightly have a differing opinion has made an entire race of violent zealots. Being a planet of photocopy General Zods has done wonders for the Viltrumites as far as projecting their strength, but beyond those brutish displays of power and atrocities, they truly have no other cards to play because of just how culturally sterile and emotionally stunted they all are. And once the wider galaxy becomes more aware of how small their numbers really were, and the fact they weren't as unkillable as they claimed, their grip on their empire would slip fast, even if they made them pay for it in blood. But even then, take away the OP perk setups and they would have died out long ago because their entire culture is mind-numbingly self-destructive. We only see a glimpse of Viltrum pre-Scourge virus, but what it shows is a pretty bleak and hilariously counterproductive people. They have no culture beyond combat and conquering, no statues are built except to deify Orgol. No arts, no music, no soul, just empty justifications for cruelty and violence. And their childcare, sweet Jesus. We briefly see a young student teacher, Nolan, who vaguely threatens one of his students for stumbling for an answer, and then telling them to find food and shelter, and that they'll be fighting each other potentially to the death tomorrow as part of class. And then immediately after that, he gets jumped by his own parents, as apparently when a Viltrumite turns 18, their rite of passage to adulthood is a fight to survive a beatdown by their parents, to prove their worth to Orgol. And that's a big if they survive, since Nolan's mom would have pounded him into mashed potatoes had his father not stepped in to declare he passed the ceremony. This crazy bitch almost beat her son to death and is more outraged at her husband stopping her, coldly saying that she never wants to see either of them again. It says a lot that Nolan's dad was probably the closest thing to kind by Viltrum standards, just by beating up his son to see if he could take it, and only stepping in when his wife was about to put him on a shirt. The life of a Viltrumite, despite all the hype for their alleged glorious destinies, is just sad. They have no love for each other, no culture, no joy, or appreciation for anything outside of combat and oppressing those weaker than them. Hell, they're so culturally sterile they apparently killed the Viltrumite Hugo Boss. They make a big deal out of surviving young adult Viltrumites getting their own military uniforms. And it's the same thing they were already wearing except for this stupid little gray sash. They may as well be wearing a shirt that says, "My parents almost beat me to death and all I got was this stupid shirt," while they're grabbing the painkillers and bandages. It's a surprise they even have scientists or doctors given how warrior obsessed they are. What this has ended up causing is the Viltrumites becoming an entire race of traumatized and emotionally stunted sociopaths, who are too afraid of ever being vulnerable out of fear of their kin jumping them for being weak. The best example of this is Conquest. On the surface, he comes off as a proud, battle-hungry lunatic even by Viltrumite standards, but when he has Mark pinned, he quietly trauma dumps on the ironically traumatized half-Viltrumite. He laments how lonely he is, how none of his fellow Viltrumites treat him like a person, and how he has no meaningful life or friends outside of his use as a floating nuke to his empire. And the saddest part of it all is, he only feels comfortable truly opening up to someone he's about to choke the life out of. And I doubt he's the only one. The remaining Viltrumites are all survivors of the Scourge virus. They've all collectively seen some shit, but they dare not shed a tear lest they be purged for not living up to Orgol's teachings. They're a race of brutal bullies who are either too proud or too afraid to self-reflect on how their actions have turned the entire galaxy against them, to the point that they all feel that the complete eradication of the Viltrumites is the only sensible solution for their own safeties. But another problem that makes dealing with the Viltrumites a bigger pain than most is how they're all immortals who never went to therapy. Viltrumites live for a long time if they don't kill each other in sparring matches or during their birthday parties. There was no new generation to question the holes in Orgol's teachings, and more importantly, they've had one singular leader for centuries, and that guy's a giant Orgol stan. Thrag is the linchpin in the Empire's ability to still chug along as business as usual, even after they were depopulated to the point they needed to send Nolan on a mission to bang his way across the galaxy. Thrag has ruled them for centuries, enforcing Orgol's will upon his subjects and ensuring the masquerade of their overwhelming strength is maintained. But the truth is, Thrag is ultimately a fraud. Not physically, mind you. That demonic fuck could dog-walk everyone, as demonstrated by Thaddeus losing his head to the guy. But as a leader, he was just a deranged lunatic mumbling loyalty to a dead man's skull like a failed artist going crazier in a German bunker. I mean, after slowly losing the war of attrition with a coalition of planets, his big plan was to let their carefully placed mole drop their orbital defenses and just go ham destroying the COP capital and hopefully take out Thaddeus. There was no other tactical choices beyond that, just wanton murder without much thought or strategy. And while he did cause massive damage to the COP's ground forces and untold civilian casualties, they failed in taking out Thad, and the cost to the Empire really outweighed any supposed gains. They exposed their high-ranking mole, who was found almost immediately after and revealed where Thrag was going and his plans, lost even more of their dwindling Viltrumite warriors failing to take out Thad, and perhaps even more devastating, their slave armies seeing their supposedly unstoppable masters fleeing a battle for the first time, and leaving them behind to surrender in disbelief. Even though their last stand in the Viltrumite War would end in Thrag finally avenging Orgol, it would come at the loss of their home planet, a devastating wake-up call for the remaining murder hobos, Thrag in particular. The Viltrumites' greatest weakness in the modern age was their refusal to face the reality of their situation. Centuries of being the dominant species caused them to never self-reflect, even after seeing the rest of the galaxy hated and feared them enough to desperately try and wipe them out via biological warfare. Even after centuries of a slow extinction from their dwindling numbers, obsessed with maintaining Orgol's teachings, they still held onto the delusion that they could actually rebuild Viltrum back to its golden age. Thrag, despite his confidence, was slowly showing cracks when confronted with the path he stubbornly kept his people on. When trying to turn Nolan back to their side, he loses his composure and briefly lashes out when the defecting Viltrumite calls their home planet a tomb.
Viltrum is not a tomb!
Even the Grand Regent can read the writing on the wall, but refuses to acknowledge it until Mark and the crew give them the mother of all wake-up calls by destroying Viltrum. The loss of their planet would be a devastating emotional hit to them, watching as their home planet became a smoldering hunk of asteroid debris, the symbol of the endless empire going up in flames. However, the hero's attempts to make this an emotional blow to the remaining Viltrumites would do the opposite. Thrag would fly into a berserker rage, killing Thaddeus, brutalizing Nolan, and almost killing Mark, before the grim reality finally kicks in. Thrag realized, finally, the people were doomed if they continued as they were. While it didn't cause a great awakening of the folly of their choices, it did do enough to get them to fall back and disappear from the entire galaxy. I'll give you 3 guesses where they went.
They've gone to Earth.
So in the time Mark was in his latest trauma coma, the remaining 37 Viltrumites snuck their way onto Earth, good job Cecil, and integrated their way into society, with Thrag smartly ordering a non-interference or destruction clause with their plans to hide out on Earth and repopulate their species. During Mark and Thrag's discussion on Earth, the Grand Regent shows a surprising amount of reason and compromise with Mark, the person who blew up his home planet, promising to avoid the usual all-is-ours sociopathy and dominating Earth, but making it clear if the hero doesn't play ball, the Viltrumites will commit to mutually assured destruction that, while maybe could spell the end of the Viltrumites, would definitely spell the end of Earth. It's telling when the emotionally and spiritually broken hero wonders what he just did. Thrag earnestly reassures him that he saved the Earth with his decision. Nothing about his tone seems mocking, and the hesitation he takes before saying it makes me think Thrag actually struggled to lightly comfort him for having to make that call. Something very out of character for Viltrumites. And where does that leave things as we look at Season 5? Pretty f***ed all around. Even if it's just 37 Viltrumites, that's still 37 traumatized space Nazis ready to crack the planet in half, and one of them is this demon. However, with the galactic-sized bullies being forced to play nice while hooking up undercover on Earth, this will ultimately be their downfall. Now, we're not going to get into comic spoilers, but I don't need them to tell you Orgol's teachings are finally going to be challenged. The one thing that ultimately destroys dog-eat-dog fascist bullshit is giving those not too far gone a taste of a real community and camaraderie. Something the emotionally traumatized immortals are getting in spades while slumming it with us on Earth. They're going to experience different cultures, mediums, things they could never try without risk of having their necks snapped, but above all, making connections with their new Earth partners. This is ultimately what happened to Nolan, and thankfully for Earth, the other 37 of his kin are under a "do not decimate" clause, and will have to grapple with those new complex emotions in a less shoving your son into an oncoming subway car way. It's a little cheesy but still true. Love will always be the strongest weapon against evil. I predict after getting to experience a life of earnest affection, and people who love them even when they show vulnerability, and offered experiences beyond conquest and battle, their entire all-is-ours mindset will crumble faster than immortal self-worth. The question is, will Mark and the gang survive long enough for that to happen? The Viltrum Empire, while scary and threatening, are like a lot of other fascist-flavored groups. Violent and good at capitalizing on fear, but mind-numbingly incompetent at everything else. While the whole galaxy would have burned for it, they were doomed on the course they were on for 4 seasons. But now forced to coexist with their supposed lessers for self-preservation, these mentally disturbed supermen and women are going to have to finally go to therapy along with our boy Mark, and have sown the seeds of their evil ideology's own destruction. Now to see if our boy Mark can maintain his own humanity while these planet glassers find theirs. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for checking out my video, and for my Invincible fans being patient with my recent DC kick. How do you feel about the Viltrum Empire? What are your favorite things or most annoying feelings about them? Let me know down below. Be sure to subscribe for more super security VTuber fun. I stream weekly here and on Twitch, so come join us one night. More Invincible videos along with more DC content as well, so I hope I see you all next time.